Okay, so let's talk about the gap theory. So in one of the other videos, I asked, could the Earth be 6,000 years old or 6 billion years old? Billions of years old. One of the popular ways of understanding creation is known as the gap theory, the reconstruction theory. And there's people that agree with it, people that don't agree with it. I personally am one that's studying it, and I have studied this even years ago in seminary. Then there's not a simple answer. For people that believe that 6,000 years ago, approximately, the Lord said, "Let there be," and it was all created instantly. And then there's people that believe it had been created millions, billions of years earlier, and then God recreated. But Genesis 1:1, so there's the perfection and chaos. That is, Genesis 1:1 refers to God's initial perfect creation. Everything that God made was beautiful. There was no sin. Verse 2, on the other hand, assumes a great catastrophe occurred. It says the earth become in a chaotic state. And according to the gap theory, the formless and void state, as recorded in Genesis 1:2, is in direct contrast to the perfect initial creation. Something happened in those verses, between those two verses of Genesis, to cause the earth to become desolate and uninhabitable after being made perfect. So, those holding the gap theory contend that this state of desolation, the state could have lasted possibly millions of years. After some unknown amount of time between these two verses, God began a recreation, restitution involved in these 6 days, or the 7 days. The remainder of the chapter of Genesis deals with the reconstruction of the earth, not the original creation. The recreation is assumed to have occurred only a few thousand years ago, and which basically 6,000 years ago, and was accomplished in 6 literal 24-hour days. Genesis 1:3, actually 2-3 is a second creation. So Genesis speaks of creation, judgment, and then recreation. Now that's the gap theory. I'd love to know your comment. Do you believe that is possible? Do you believe that's possible? If so, post in comments. If you think no, that's nonsense. Everything was created 6,000 years ago when he said, "Let there be," then I'd like to know your thoughts there as well. So those who hold to the gap theory want to accept we still see that the Bible is held literal. It does not go against the 6 days of creation. It's just 6 days of recreation. And it actually provides a solution, many say, between the two problems between the Bible and science. Fossil records and, radiation, when they're like testing the age of something, they're like, hey, this could be 3 billion years old or 3 million years old. And you're like, there's no way, the earth is only 6,000 years old. So, but Christians who believe in the gap theory, they believe that, the earth was destroyed and then it was recreation. Now, the judgment usually is spoken of as a flood because of the statement in Genesis 1:2, the earth was covered with water. This judgment is also known as the Luciferic flood because of Lucifer, who became, the fallen angel who became the devil. And the cause of judgment is usually given as rebellion of Satan or some pre-Adam, this is important, a race before Adam, pre-Adam, that sinned. All the inhabitants of the earth were judged by God, leaving behind fossil remains. In fact, the present plants and animals living today have no genetic relationship with fossils left behind. So it's very interesting. Those who advocate the theory, I'm going to go a little deeper, we'll go into this. There is Genesis 1:2. Let's go to Genesis 1:2. And when it says the earth became void, the earth was void. It's actually a Hebrew verb, if not pronounce it correctly, hayah, Hayah. It is possible to translate it as became or had become. So instead of the earth was, the earth became, because it's a verb. It became void. Thus the earth was created perfectly and then became without form, became void. The word, though created perfect, became desolate and uninhabitable. What had been previously a perfect world was now destroyed. Those who argue for this translation point out that other places in creation that same verb, haya, is translated became or had become. Genesis 2, 7, Genesis 10, there's other verses. Hence, the translation of the verb is consistent with the context of creation. So now there's some advocates also go back to the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament for haya. Haya occurs 27 times in the first chapter of Genesis, and the Greek translators rendered haya in 20 instances by the Greek word. Again, I don't speak Greek, but egeneto, egeneto, which means became. So is it became? It became void. It became that way. Formless and void. Genesis 1:2 describes the earth at that time of being without form or void and desolate or uninhabitable. Or we assume that God created the world in a chaotic condition. The phrase without form and void seemed to require some type of judgment. Now, it could be a stretch, but it's possible. In addition, Isaiah 34:11, Jeremiah 4:23 through 26, they use that phrase form and void, but it clearly refers to some type of divine judgment. So, could Genesis 1:2 also be a judgment? And Genesis 1:2 speaks of a world in a state of darkness. Darkness is almost always used in Scripture as a sign of sin and judgment. God did not say that darkness was good, as he said about the light. If God had created the world in light, then something caused the world to become dark. So, again, we can go deeper into this, but I want to know your thoughts. Post in comments. Hit the share button. Let us talk about this. Isaiah 45:18 clearly states that God did not create the world in vain. The Hebrew translated in vain is, again, back to not speaking Hebrew, but lo tohu. T-O-H-U is the word translated without form in Genesis 1:2. If God did not create the world in vain, then it seems logical to assume sometime in the earth's past it became desolate. And since we have a great God, then possibly recreation instead of creation. So we can go deeper into the book of Isaiah, the book of Jeremiah. But let's read Jeremiah. Jeremiah 4:23 through 26. I beheld the earth, and indeed it was without form and void, and the heavens had no light. I beheld, and indeed there was no man, and all the birds of the heaven had fled. I beheld, and indeed the fruitful land was a wilderness, and all the cities are broken down at the presence of the Lord in his fierce anger. So, again, this shows the result of judgment, which overthrew the primal order of Genesis 1:1. Well, at least that's potential. Now, then we can go to Ezekiel 28. We can go into talk about the fall of the angelic fall. And there's just so much. And again, God blessed him. Genesis 1:27. And we'll end with this. Genesis 1:27. God blessed him and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it and have dominion over the fish and the sea, the fowl of the air, and every living creature that moves upon the earth. You only replenish something that was already filled. You only recreate something that had been created. So, now, could there have been a race of people before Adam? We'll dig into that later. So be sure to subscribe. Give me your comments below. And remember, in this discussion, this is the beautiful part. In this discussion, Jesus Christ is still King. Jesus Christ is still Creator. So we're never going to deviate from the major to focus on what I would call the minor. But it does really call for us to seek it out and to find truth. So this is Pastor Wayne. Hope this has been a thought-provoking message, at least. Be sure to subscribe, hit the share button, comment below, and we'll dig deeper. Make it a great day. God bless.